Hi everyone, this is Tim Brennan, and this is essentially a recap of our RCIA session last week. At least a couple minutes. I want to clarify a few things that probably didn't come through because, of course, the video last week didn't work. What I'm going to do is talk about essentially three things. Last week we talked about, or I talked about, nobody got to hear, the call to happiness. The idea that when you pick up a catechism, you might think, well, the catechism, when it comes to morality, is going to be filled with rules. Basically, don't do this, don't do that. Thou shalt not. But the catechism doesn't approach it that way. Yes, there's a section on the Ten Commandments, and we'll get to that next week. But the catechism actually looks at the morality section, a third pillar, the third major part of the catechism, as being about much more than rules, don't do this, don't do that. Instead, it's actually much more about how we're supposed to live, what we're called to, and what we're called to is happiness. Now, everybody would say they want to be happy. I love it when any parent is interviewed or asked about what do you want for your child? They're going to say, I want my son or daughter to be happy. But think of it this way. If you have a 15-year-old son, you know your son has certain ideas about what will make him happy that you don't necessarily consider all that great for his happiness. You want him to do well in school. He wants to play video games. You want him to think about his future and start planning for perhaps college or learning a trade. He wants to hang out with his friends and play more video games, right? So these can be, real issues in a family. And they also point out the idea that happiness is not just getting what you want in the immediate sense. It's not about immediate gratification. It's really about our eternal destiny. We were built for something. This is why so many people can say, once they figure out what they were really made to do, what their real vocation is, that makes them the most happy. Okay? So we were created in a special way, in the image and likeness of God. This is why we're capable of, with His grace, becoming holy, because we were given capacity for it. Just as God has endless capacity for holiness, we can have capacity for holiness. Right? And also the idea that we can be creators. We can't create out of nothing like God can, but we can build, we can paint, we can draw, we can sculpt, we can put up skyscrapers. We can be creators too. So we have a special dignity as a creature. I often joke about Coco, the signing gorilla who died a year or two ago, that we're still greater than Coco. Coco could speak several hundred, I think it was 1,500 to 3,000 signs in American Sign Language, which is amazing. But Coco couldn't reason through major problems like we can. Coco can't create or couldn't create like we can. So we're still greater than the animals. Not to diminish their wonderfulness, but we are created in the image and likeness of God. We have a special quality and series of qualities that animals don't have. And the other thing to talk about really is, I mentioned several important things about the soul, and this was in the PowerPoint, some of the handouts and so forth. The idea that the soul, we don't want to say that the soul has parts. It's not like an engine. But there are things in the soul. The idea of intellect, will, or the passions. And we should really try to understand what they are. The intellect is like a headlight on a car. It helps us to see where we need to go. The will is like the wheel of a car. It helps steer us in the right direction. And remember, will is stronger than want. I always point that out. You can want something, but to will it means you're going to make it happen. And the passions are essentially a neutral thing. But what they're really made for is like a gas pedal to throw us forward towards what is good for us, or like a brake pedal to stop us from going forward to what is bad for us. So always keep those things in mind, that the intellect, the will, the passions, all these things in our soul are to help us to see, to reason, to understand, to achieve what we can achieve with God's grace. So that's essentially the recap for last week. What I'm going to do is, if everything works right, I will have 3 more short videos about what we will actually cover for this week. In the first one, we'll talk about the idea of virtue and what a virtue is. In the second video, we'll look at the specific cardinal virtues. And then the last video, we'll look at the theological virtues. So none of these videos will be long, but I can only make videos of a certain length on this computer and for YouTube at this point. And if anybody knows how I can finally figure out how to get YouTube to recognize a phone number so I can get a code, a verification code to actually do YouTube Live, let me know, because YouTube is not helping. Anyway, I'll talk to you later, and God bless. Thanks.